Welcome to the latest edition of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley Engelhardt. I'm Matt Chernoff. Thanks so much for joining us. Your sports business podcast covering all things sports and business. You see, we put them together. I'll remind you, you can subscribe to this little podcast on any podcast platform. Just search Deals and Deadlines, or you can watch it each and every week. New episodes drop each Friday on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. We'll be joined by Mike Garafolo coming up in a little while from the NFL Network. It's a busy week around the league, so we'll pick his brain about some of the big topics. But Hadley, before we get into the NFL business, I want to talk to you about something you and I have talked a lot about, and that is the ever-changing world of NIL, how it's changed the business of college football. There was a 5-star recruit, kid named Jackson Cantwell, offensive tackle, who was the number 1 recruit in the country. Everybody who follows this stuff closely said he was going to Georgia. And then, wow, in the 11th hour, a big financial offer from Miami reportedly came in, and we're seeing numbers upwards of $5 million. Don't know what's real and what's not, but now he's going to play for Mario Cristobal and the Hurricanes. Drew Rosenhaus is his agent. Like, you guys are taking over this landscape of college athletics with these high-priced, big 5-star recruits the same way you would in the NFL and the NBA. It just seems like it's not slowing down.
Yeah, and Drew, selfishly, I'm sure, loves having him in Miami, where he's based. So now he can watch him and monitor him and, more importantly, protect him for his own benefit. At the end of the day, it's about money. We say this all the time.
Kid said it wasn't, though. Can't well make it very clear. It's not. That narrative is about money. Okay.
Well, University of Georgia, we'll use that as the example, is a better academic school, is in a better conference, and is always going to be fighting for a national championship. So if it was about all those things, and let's look at their offensive line. Their offensive line is the minor league for the NFL. They go right into the NFL, and many of them start as a rookie. So if you're really looking at those things collectively, Georgia's where he'd go to. I'm not sure if Miami was a last-minute financial bump or he was always going to Miami. I think they kind of drum-rolled it and made it more exciting than it probably really was behind the scenes. Again, we don't know exactly what went on, but this was a financial decision. Was it millions difference? Possibly. So I don't blame the kid. The money that these guys can make for the next, he has to be there for 3 years. So if he can make $3 to $5 million a year for the next 3 years, we'll call it. That's $9 to $15 million. If at Georgia they were paying him $2 million a year, we'll say, that's $6 million. It's a big number. If he's that good, they will find him. He will turn pro, and he will make even more money.
Yeah. All right, let's transition to the NFL, where busy week, right? The NFL schedule release came out Wednesday night. I think this is another one of the great sort of tent poles that the NFL has now given us, right? It's the draft in April. It's the schedule in May. It's free agency in March. Like, they sort of dominate all these times when they're not playing football. But I thought this week was intriguing. I'm almost to the point where I think people enjoy events more than games, right? The NBA draft lottery, ton of attention this past week with the Cooper Flag Dallas stuff now. And NFL schedule release, all we're going to do is see networks and dates, right? Pop up.
No, they're dragging it out to create the drama.
It was days of it. They started breadcrumbing games on Monday, and then international games Tuesday, and the full schedule Wednesday.
And then there were leaks, by the way.
Which they leak on purpose, they leak by accident. I'm just so intrigued by the media landscape and how these sports are manipulating times when they're not playing to try to stay in the headlines. It's a rat race.
Well, it's not manipulating. It's smart business.
Yeah.
It's great marketing.
I think those two things have a gray area.
No. And so, people complain always about Roger Goodell and the things that he does, and with the fines and certain things that I agree with some of the fans out there that he kind of oversteps his boundary. But what he has done as commissioner, he's a marketing genius. Mm-hmm. He's a branding genius. These international games, these schedule drops, all these things with the draft, moving the draft from New York, where it was a mainstay, to all these different smaller markets. Wonderful. And I think it's great that he's done it. The announcement in the off week of the D.C. Stadium, the RFK Stadium, now the schedule release. Unbelievable stuff and unbelievable branding for the NFL.
So let's talk about the international games. I believe we have 8 weeks of international games this year, which is the most ever. 5 different countries, continues to expand. Globalization is one of their favorite terms. I think while that's important, they love the 9:30 a.m. window on Sunday because they can play these games
100%.
at 3:30 in Germany and it's 9:30 here, so it's genius on that front. Whenever this happens and we add more games internationally, people wonder, are we ever going to have an international division? And you and I have talked about this. It just seems logistically it's a lot, right? Can you get free agents to go play in another country and live there half the time? So I don't know that we ever get there, but it feels like we're going to have an international game a week in the next few years. Like we'll have 17 or 18 weeks of international games.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think we'll ever have a team there because I think the logistic nightmare, because of injuries and tryouts and a lot of different factors that go into play, I think it would be very difficult for the league to do that. However, these international games are great for the fan and for the owners. I can tell you firsthand, representing these players who have gone and are going to these international games, they hate it. They're there for a couple of days. They're not traveling there. They're not sightseeing there. They're in and out for business. There's a time zone change. They've got to get acclimated. By the time they get acclimated, they have practices. They don't have time to play around. They fly back. The team that kind of benefits from the international games is the Minnesota Vikings this year because they're going to play in, I believe, Brazil and then in London.
Right.
So
first time it's ever happened, somebody will play in two different countries internationally back-to-back weeks.
The Jaguars have played in London twice in a week, which is not terrible because then they have some time off. They can enjoy some time in that city. Traveling to two different countries, not so easy. Not sure how that came about. But it's great that Minnesota gets to travel to two different countries, and for the players, not so much.
So I saw the Falcons are going to be heading to Germany. They're going to play in Berlin in week 10, which is November 9th. Now, anytime you look at that flight, it's between 10 and 11 hours. So you talk about players hating it. I'm going to guess, and when we record this, it's on Wednesday before the schedule drop, that their bye week is going to be around it because that throws your schedule off completely for a sport that is built 100% routine and regimen. It does affect the teams, but let's be honest. The league can say they care about such things. They really don't. They care more about having another international window, another destination, another chance to globalize their game. So the team having to deal with that stuff, it's concerning. It's not their biggest concern.
And let's clarify. The definition of globalization is more money.
Mm-hmm, of course.
They are not concerned about fans in other countries per se. They're concerned about fans in other countries purchasing merchandise, buying streaming services, doing things that benefit the owners, which again trickles down to the players because they get a percentage of that per the CBA. So it's great for the brand, and that's why the NFL is an elite league compared to the other American team leagues. I mean, nothing compares to it.
Okay, so let's talk about one of the other big stories around the NFL this week. That was the, I guess, abrupt retirement of Derek Carr, who last weekend said, done, don't want to get another surgery, don't want to deal with having to rehab for a year. He's been dealing with some stuff for a while. Why this is super intriguing is he is volunteering to walk away from $30 million. Now, what it's going to do to the Saints, it'll have some effects on their cap, some dead money they're going to have to deal with. But it's rare that a player, it's happened, it's rare that a player walks away from this money. So if you were a betting man, do you think Derek Carr never plays football again?
I think he never plays football again. For the audience, let's call it what it is. He has made a lot of money, almost $200 million in just salary. Forget marketing and endorsements. So let's not feel sorry for him and have the violin out that he's walking away. But yes, he is walking away from $30 million. And I guess he had to weigh all the different factors. And we'll talk to Mike about this as well and get his opinion on it. About, as an agent, it's very hard to advise a player to walk away from money like $30 million. But he has to do what's right for himself and his family and the wear and tear on his body. And the mental part of it is exhausting. He's got kids that are a little bit older now. He wants to be more involved. Yes, he could have waited another 9 months and been more involved, and it wouldn't have changed much, and had another $30 million in his pocket. He made this decision. It's something I'm sure he's been weighing on for a long time. It wasn't something that happened overnight, and they kind of went over the pros and cons, and he weighed everything and made this decision. And, good for him that he made a decision that was based upon what he needed and he wanted, and not just about following the mighty dollar.
Let me add that the Saints, according to some numbers, will be left with about $80 million in dead cap through an injury settlement, signing bonus, and there's a repayment that could happen. The way it could work after repayment, it would be about $50 million in dead money that they can split up, where they would have dead cap hits this upcoming season of about $15 million with about $35 million in 2026. So that's
and then also they're walking away from some money that they're entitled to because they're signing bonus proration. Okay. And remember, a month ago he took a big bonus, I think about $10 million that was paid, and he's not paying that back either.
Yeah, good for him.
So yeah, so that's a good parting of so even though he's walking away from $30 million, he took money that he kind of knew he may not be playing through, or maybe he didn't at that point. But he's not going to have to pay that back. He's not going to have to pay back any of the proration. So it's a win-win. And then let's talk about post-football. It's a great PR move for him because look what we're talking about. He walked away from this money. So I think as he goes into the next phase of his career, if he wants to stay involved in sports, in media, I think this is a great way to go out and people will talk positively about the things that he did, and it wasn't always about money.
We're going to ask you about one more thing that we'll talk to Mike Garafolo about. Trey Hendrickson, the star pass rusher of the Bengals, says the team had told him we're going to have communication after the draft. We'll talk about a contract. He says they've gone radio silent. You and I have talked about the Bengals. They're a bit of a wonky franchise when it comes to how they've taken care of their own guys. Now, they did pay Jamar. They did pay T. Higgins. Joe got broke off, so there's only so much to go around. It sounds like,
I like that terminology you've got going.
You like that?
Yes.
I'm 48 years old. I'm trying to stay young. So I guess what the question becomes is, are the Bengals just being quiet because they're done communicating on a deal and you're going to play out what you have? Or is this a negotiating ploy to try to come back to a lower number? Like, how do you see this playing out?
You know, it's funny because the Bengals are the wild card, like you said. Traditionally, they are the hardest team to negotiate with. Their communication skills are at a low level. I've dealt with them personally over the years, and it's not always to deal with them. Not easy to deal with them. With regard to Trey Hendrickson, they've got to make a decision on, is this part of their future? He's an older guy who's still super productive. I think that what they're trying to say is, hey, we love you. We like what you've done in the past. We're not so sure about what your future brings. Even though you played at the highest level last year, as you get 30 plus, things tend to dip down. And I think they're just telling him, hey, we're want to keep the dialogue going on, but not as aggressive as he would like to do it. Did they say to him, we will touch base with your representatives after the draft? If they did, they should have done that at least and kept some sort of dialogue going on. But this is the Bengals being the Bengals.
So we'll talk to Mike Garafolo about Trey Hendrickson. We'll talk to him about the Derek Carr situation, the international expansion around the National Football League, and more. NFL insider Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network joins us next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley and Matt. We appreciate you guys joining us. I'll remind you, you can subscribe to the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite pods, just search up Deals and Deadlines, hit the subscribe button. New episodes will drop each and every Friday, and you can watch us on the 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, big week around the NFL. With that in mind, let's bring in Mike Garafolo from the NFL Network. Does a great job covering the league. He joins us here on Deals and Deadlines. Mike, we appreciate the time. How are you?
You got it, guys. Great to hear from you, and hope you guys are all doing well.
Doing very well. Let's start with the schedule coming out this week. And Hadley and I were talking about what the league has done, and it's been kind of an interesting week in sports and a battle for headlines off the field and off the court. The NBA draft lottery took a ton of attention. Baseball dropped a bomb with Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson are now off the permanent ban list, and the NFL schedule released this week. It started Monday when we started getting some breadcrumbs on games, and then the international games. Like, the league has done such a good job of making this a week-long event of just giving us dates and times on games we already knew were taking place. It's so funny to me.
Yeah, it's they always wanted their event in May. They had Combine in late February, Super Bowl and Combine, followed by free agency, followed by the draft. And it's like, well, how do we make an event in May? And they've done a good job of that by honestly making this schedule a full week event, right? Like, in the way that they've leaked it out. And then, I've kind of thought it was silly in the end to, have, by the time you get to Wednesday of the schedule release, it's like everything's kind of already out there. But the way that they've trickled it out, and they've allowed their broadcast partners to drop a few here and there, which gives them a way to promote the fact that they've got NFL coverage coming in the fall. And it's a 3-4 day process, and the fans get all fired up for it. I just, always find it's like, you get these games, and they added the flex on Thursday, and they added the flex on Monday, and it's like, plan your entire fall, but some things may change by the time you get there. So I thought that part was kind of funny, but, You're right. It's turned into its own event.
Yeah, and it's great. And so, Mike is not has been doing this for a while, and you got involved in this as a journalist way before the NFL Network and all the different media outlets. How much has the access to information and all the different media outlets changed how you go about your daily reporting and news stuff? Well,
yeah. I mean, I always go back to when I started in 2004 when we didn't even have a blog. I mean, we started our blog in, I think, 06, 07 maybe. So every day was just you had one story to write and you had your notebook. And I still, our deadline to file, our early deadline, our soft deadline was 7 p.m. Like that's when they wanted you to have your stuff in. And I'd be filing at 6:55. And I look back now, you had to write one story, one notebook. What the hell took me so long? What was I doing all day long? It's not even like you had your cell phone to thumb through Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. Because now if you're covering a team on a daily basis, you're writing 6, 7, 8 entries by the end of the day on your website, and it's it's a good and a bad thing. I think it's good because when I covered the team, I enjoyed the 53rd guy on the roster story just as much as I loved the first guy, but that wouldn't make the paper very often. And Hadley, you've rep guys who have been practice squad guys on the edge of the roster, and a lot of times their story is more interesting. They're hanging on, they're fighting for their lives. So the infinite space allows you to kind of dig into more stuff. Now, since then, I've left the beat and I've gone to national jobs, Fox and USA Today and NFL Network. And I say this all the time. There's 32 teams out there. We talk about on the regular probably 100 guys, right? Because nationally it's got to be guys that ring the bell. So you do the math on that. That's less than 3 per team, or about 3 per team, I should say, right? So I kind of I appreciate what beat writers are doing on a day-to-day basis, providing information on all these guys and having infinite space and being able to do it. It's the landscape has certainly changed since I first started, Hadley. You know that.
Michael, let's talk about some of the quarterback stuff. And in Atlanta, the Kirk Cousins watch has been on for a while now. And one thing I kept saying from a local perspective is, I didn't think there was going to be much of a market, at the price that the Falcons are wanting to try to get back. I didn't know how many jobs were going to be there, and they're a little stubborn in this, right? They feel, I think both sides are not thrilled. Like Kirk asked for his release. The Falcons are saying, we paid you. If we need to park you on the bench, fine. I just didn't think there would be another spot available. So as we sit here now in mid-May, what's the landscape look like at all for Kirk finding another destination?
Yeah, Pittsburgh's kind of waiting for Rodgers to make his decision. If that doesn't pan out, that certainly opens up them as a possibility. But beyond that, the Saints are the most recent one. I don't see the Saints, particularly in the division, making a move for a quarterback. And in the meantime, sticking out with what they have right now, I think that could change down the line. It could change in Minnesota too. I mean, if J.J. McCarthy struggles, and that's seemed to have been at least what Rodgers is sort of holding out hope for, is the possibility to go to Minnesota to follow the Favre path. The other option is what the Eagles did years ago. Not that they intended to do it. It just so happened when Teddy Bridgewater got hurt in training camp, and all of a sudden the Vikings were desperate for a quarterback and traded a 1 for Sam Bradford, which the Eagles could do because they had Carson Wentz ready to go, and the Falcons certainly are in that position already with Michael Penix. So, I think that's the route that not only Cousins but Rodgers as well might take. So it's kind of hard to predict how it's going to go because one seems to have effect on the other there. It could be a waiting game. Now, the one thing I will say, and I think that this was sort of the message that Cousins sent pre-draft by showing up for off-season workouts is, he's got a family. We know he loves the Atlanta area. His frustrations are with how things played out with the organization, but he loves the Atlanta area. The deeper he gets into this, he's got that no-trade clause. He might exercise it from a standpoint of saying, look, I spent the entire offseason here. My kids are ready to start school. I'm not moving. I'm staying here. I think that is we sit there and say, he's at the mercy of other teams and he's at the mercy of what the Falcons are willing to do. He's got a hand in this one, and he may play it.
Yeah, and remember, he's got a guaranteed contract. Mm-hmm. So it's not like he's hurting for money. And if it means, hey, if I'm going to be on the bench somewhere or be a backup somewhere, I could stay in Atlanta. Just like Mike said, I've got my kids here. I like it here. I'll play it out and I'll stick it to the Falcons, and if there's an injury or something happens, then I'll play. But, so let me ask you this question, Mike. So you are on the dais with some other inside reporters like an Ian Rappaport and a Pelissero and yourself, and obviously you guys are colleagues and you guys, seem to get along, obviously, and work together. But obviously there's the competition of breaking news first. Does that really play into it? And behind the scenes, in a fun way, do you guys kind of rub each other on who gets the it story sooner than the next guy?
Yeah, a little bit. I wasn't out front on that huge Christian Benford deal that was just done, man. That was a monster, that thing.
Wow. I was talking about that with Andrew earlier.
I mean, if you want to open the door, a jar, I might kick it open. You know what I'm
you
saying,
do this
brother?
here? Wow.
No, it's a part of the job. I used to kind of, this was me earlier on in my career. No kids, right? A little bit different perspective of like living and dying with this stuff. And listen, part of my reasoning, I wanted to go to the NFL Network, period. But one of the positives for going to NFL Network was I knew I was joining a team, and I knew I had Ian Rappaport, who is willing to live and die with this stuff. So if something happened on a weekend and I'm with my wife, and it's like, all right, no problem, Ian will handle that, right? And it's not to say that I'm not competitive, but it's and he's also, I don't want to make it seem like he doesn't enjoy his life. He's playing Shinnecock in the rain today, by the way.
Coming back from the Derby.
You can't let this stuff define you, especially because of how instant it is. I used to enjoy. I talk about being in newspapers. I used to enjoy. You went in the next day into the media room, and my editor at the time, Kevin Manahan, used to say this: everybody knew who won the previous day. You had a scoop, nobody else did. You walked in, you were peacocking because they couldn't do anything about it till the next day. Now it's 10 seconds. Somebody else got it confirmed. Boom. So I think that sort of takes a little bit of the pressure off and a little bit of the live and die off. And I still think that there's. I tell Ian this all the time. Like, Woj was known for his volume of scoops, Woj bombs, all this stuff, and certainly worked hard for it, deserved every bit of it. But one of the memes and the TV appearances that people remember is Brian Windhorse alluding to what was going to happen with why would they do that, right? They still use that picture to this day. Yep. He didn't have the scoop, but he told you it was coming, right? So there's still a little bit of, sometimes we're like, oh, well, hold on, don't say anything because we want the big scoop. And it's like, no, sometimes there's value to, hey, don't be surprised if something happens here. Keep your eye on this or blah, 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 blah. So I have tried to balance that a little bit because that's the stuff that you can put that out, let's say, the day before, if you know something's coming, and then everybody else has the bang, 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 bang scoop at the same time the next day. It's like, oh, wait, that guy told us it was coming yesterday, So I've sort of tried to balance that and see the value in that as well as trying to get the scoop itself.
Mike, what was the level of surprise on the Derek Carr retirement announcement?
Not so much. Honestly, it started this offseason with us chasing down that he had told his teammates at the end of last season that he was thinking of hanging it up. And we chased that down. We were told, no. He's still got, and he kind of went through the financial process with the Saints. And there were discussions before they converted his signing bonus and guaranteed it and all that stuff. There were discussions about a possible pay cut, and he resisted all of that. He was not going to take a pay cut. And so they converted his signing bonus. And then, okay, fine, he's locked in. He's not retiring. He's playing for the Saints. And then that was around the time that he started to throw again. And unbeknownst to many people for a couple of weeks, it was back to, my arm's messed up. I may have to shut it down. And so once Ian reported that he was having shoulder issues, which I think was right before the draft, if I'm not mistaken, about a week before, at that point we started to circle around it again. It was like, okay, here comes the retirement that we thought we were chasing, or we knew we were chasing early in the offseason. It's kind of come back to that now at this point. I'd say no surprise once it finally went down, but within the last couple of weeks, it was like, whoa, this is actually really going to be a thing.
Yeah, and that even adds, like we talked about on a prior episode, Mike, about Justin Tucker and what went down there, and some people were surprised to see that he was released. And one of the things we discussed is, when you draft a place kicker or a punter in the 6th round, which for that position is kind of equivalent to maybe a 3rd round type of selection, the value of it. And people were surprised to see that. And obviously people like you, I think, knew this was going to happen, especially once the draft unfolded the way it did.
Yeah, they made it clear at the combine that they were evaluating all of their, kicking possibility. They certainly announced that this was coming down the chute at some point there. And what they did was, as they led up to the draft and even beyond that, it's a football decision, it's a football decision, it's a football decision. And Justin Tucker struggling last year certainly lends itself to being a football decision. But I would say that without the off-field stuff this offseason, I believe Justin Tucker would still be a Raven.
I agree.
I do believe he'd be competing with somebody. Would it be a 6th-round pick, maybe a 7th-round pick, maybe a priority undrafted free agent? So it's a football decision that was accelerated by what happened off the field with him. And look, the reason you say it's a football decision is, let's say, and I don't think this is the case. I mean, I just look at the number of accusations and the consistency with them. Let's say it turns out this was all one giant hoax. Well, now the Ravens got to be able to say, well, that's fine. We didn't cut him for that. We cut him for a football decision.
Oh, yeah.
So that's why that was kind of played up in that regard. But yeah, no, I don't know. At this point, certainly he would need to get some clearance in this NFL investigation and some kind of clarity off the field to be kicking in the NFL again.
Mike, one more. We were discussing Trey Hendrickson earlier. What is your best guess on how this plays out with the Bengals and his contract?
Yeah, I mean, the Bengals are usually slow to react on stuff, so I would say this drags through the offseason, mini camp, drags into training camp. Tough to predict what they would do from that end. Would they kind of hold firm? Would they open themselves back up? I mean, listen, when they were, it's like, well, we've got a numerical value of you here. But then when we go to trade you, well, we want a king's ransom in return. Well, Trey Hendrickson and his representation are saying, well, which is it? I mean, if you're putting a value on him trade-wise that he's one of the elite pass rushers, then your monetary value should be elite. So something's got to give in that regard. They've got to come down with what they want trade-wise or come up monetarily. And I know, I'm not going to put words in Trey Hendrickson's mouth or his representation, but, I mean, at this point, maybe you take less to get out of there, even set yourself up for free agency or some kind of deal moving forward with a team that gives you security through the next couple of years where maybe it's not what you had in mind with the Bengals, but you're willing to take less to go elsewhere. We've seen that before. There was a unique Ngakoue one year where he took a couple million less to get out. I think it was to get out of Jacksonville and go to Minnesota. I'm trying to remember how it was, but I do remember at some point you just get so fed up. You go, you know what? If they're not going to show me the love here, I'll take a little bit less to go somewhere else. We'll see. I mean, we've got a couple of steps till we get to that point, but I just don't see it being resolved anytime soon.
Mike, it's a fascinating time of year. We know you're always busy. We appreciate you spending some time with us, and we'll talk to you down the road.
You got it, boys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike.
There's Mike Garafolo, NFL Network, on as I said, a really busy time around the NFL. All right, coming up, the NBA Draft Lottery got a ton of attention because of who won it. Is it rigged? Has been the talk all week. Plus, what are the odds that your high school football player ends up in the NFL? We'll tell you next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt again. We thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you're subscribed to the pod wherever you get your favorite podcast. New episodes drop each and every Friday. And again, you can watch us on that 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, let's talk about the big news out of the NBA this week. The draft lottery, which has become an event all to its own, and people have questioned for years whether it's on the up and up. It doesn't matter that you have people in the back certifying this whole process, but, when the Mavericks win it after Luka's traded 3 months earlier, people wonder how much.
Nico looks like a rock star.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? Like he had this whole master plan in place.
So I read this on Cooper Flag, and I wanted to get your opinion. Again, this is all projection because we've seen players before who have not lived up to the billing. But from a business standpoint, the drafting and winning the lottery and getting Cooper Flag could be worth a minimum of $500 million, up to $1 billion for the franchise, in this case, the Mavericks. And I'll give you one instance. They had started to refund fans season ticket dollars who were so upset over the Luka trade. In one night, they have a waiting list. Yeah, they have a waiting list again for the fans who want to go see Cooper Flag. So from a business perspective, forget just the basketball. This was an enormous win for Dallas.
Well, it's an enormous win for the Adelson family because they are wanting to have gambling. They want to build an entire complex, an entire community around the Mavericks, but about the gambling and the hospitality, and the city and state have said no to it. they now have even more leverage than they had before about potentially moving to Vegas. So it's great for the franchise. And it's great for everyone has to remember about Cooper Flagg. Let's talk about the player. He reclassified as a high school junior. He would have been a high school senior last year, went to college year early. He is 17, 18 years old. He played at the highest level at the biggest university and did everything everyone expected him to do. So do I think he will do it again in the NBA? Most definitely. Will he have some bumps and bruises as a rookie? Of course he will. But if Anthony Davis is healthy and the supporting cast that they build around them, they become a viable contender for years to come. The Mavericks and the Adelson family really benefited from this because like you said, the value of the first pick overall in general, winning the first pick, is $500 million to $1 billion. Then you add a generational talent. That number may be north of that. So I think the big winner in this is the Adelson family because they can now demand more. They have more leverage to do what they want to do in Dallas. And if not, they're going to move this franchise to Vegas.
Can I give you one piece of like a devil's advocate to that? That let's say Cooper Flagg is as good as everybody thinks. It's going to take a year or two before you get to that point, before you grow into a man's body. It's the NBA. Anthony Davis is not exactly the healthiest as he gets older. Wasn't healthy in his 20s. Kyrie's coming off an ACL. He's not going to be back for a while. I know they've already shut down the noise of it. I would have been very interested if I'm Dallas of moving this if the Giannis conversation could happen, only because the timeline of Anthony Davis and Kyrie plays more towards a Giannis now. I would have 3 stars together. They're not going to do it. My thought is by the time Cooper Flagg really is ready to dominate, Anthony Davis is probably not going to be close to what he was.
You're probably right. And they're going to make other moves. There's no doubt about it. The question is, does Nico stay in charge? Do they move on because of what happened with the Luka trade and all the negative stuff that happened? And if not for the but-for clause, winning a 1% chance or 1.8%?
A 1.8% chance, yeah.
To win the lottery based upon the odds, it's great for them. It's great for basketball. It's great for Cooper. I mean, everyone wins in this. And
you know who loses? How about teams like Utah, Charlotte, and these teams who have the worst records every year, and they're picking 4 and 5 and 6?
I know.
That's
but
the lottery.
Those are not major market teams. Dallas is had been an elite team only recently, and it's great for basketball.
Yeah.
And the NBA, the product itself has not been the best product. Everyone talks about the product. And even though the playoffs have been somewhat exciting to some degree with some upsets and teams doing better than people would think, I really believe this whole thing, and they're now parlaying it. They're now doing the NBA Combine. They're really trying to follow in the NFL model of making it a year-round discussion. And it is exciting. And because college basketball has grown and the viewership has grown, people are now more intrigued with the Combine, with the lottery, and the names like Cooper Flagg. So I think everyone wins, and I'm going to go on record. The Adelson family is the biggest winner of all of it.
All right, the other big story in sports this week, and it just dropped out of left field, literally. Major League Baseball and their commissioner, Rob Manfred, middle of the week's like, oh, hey, by the way, Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, they're off the banned list. What? Like, again, here we are. Pete's now been gone 8 months, passed away. Shoeless Joe's been gone for 70 years. But they're now both off the banned list, which leads to Hall of Fame enshrinement talk. 2028's the earliest it could be there. I want to talk about the business side of it. What does this do for the Pete Rose business, who for years was an autograph hound, selling whatever he could, merchandise? There's a chance that Pete has a big box somewhere that his kids have a balls with HOF on it just in case, that now become more relevant and more, worth a lot more because Pete posthumously will go into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, there's 2 parts of the Hall of Fame. There's the museum, which is the history of baseball, which he has not been included in. And his history speaks for itself. Forget the gambling and all the other things that went on that were wrong. His success on the field, Shoeless Joe's success on the field, is real. And that should be part of our history of baseball. Now, the enshrinement, what they want to do is keep them from using that to benefit financially. These guys are dead. And so they're not going to personally benefit from it.
Which Manfred alluded to in his statement.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they don't want these guys to benefit. And that's the thing. You don't want the gold jacket on in football when you're not really entitled to that kind of stuff. So they won that side of it because these guys have now since passed away. The fact that I've thought about this too is, did he sign a bunch of things with HOF, even though people know that that was signed before he got in the Hall of Fame? Does it add value? It may. But for the baseball history, I think it's important to at least think about what these guys have done. I'm not for these players being in the Hall of Fame because they did the cardinal sin, is gambling. And even though it was for a positive thing, if you put that message in there that you're allowing people, when they pass away, to break rules while they're playing, but that won't affect you getting the Hall of Fame when you pass away, I think it's a bad message. And I think most of the voters are old school and will probably think that way as well.
Okay, one last thing I want to talk to you about. I saw a great piece on the odds of making it to the NFL. If you're a mom or a dad listening and you've got a high school football player. So I saw these numbers. Right now, there are 1 million, almost 1.1 million high school football players in America. 310,000 of them high school seniors playing football. 70,147 end up being NCAA football players. Percentage of those that end up playing from high school to college is about 6.5%. Then you get to the NCAA seniors playing football, about 15,000. Players scouted by the league, about 6,500. Players invited to the combine, about 350. Players drafted in the NFL, 256. Add in the undrafted, it's about 300 make the NFL. So the percentage of college players to make it to the league, 1.6%. NFL players playing in year 4 of the league, 150. So I was at 1 million, 1.1 playing high school with the dream of college and then the NFL. And 6 or 7 years later, about 1.6% are in the league, and 150 of those are playing 4 years later.
It is. We try to educate parents and kids at a very young age about the likelihood of what we call making the NFL, which means 3+ years. And we always knew that this model showed that it was next to nothing. And so, and we talk about these players who get to college. Those are the 4 and 5 star with some 3 stars. There's plenty of 0, 1, and 2 stars that are quality high school players that can go play Division III, Division II, NAIA, and get your education paid for and prepare for your life after football. But everyone thinks that they're the chosen one, that they are going to be the next so-and-so. And the reality is it's not like that. Now, what's not in this model, when this model was made, is the NIL numbers. So if you're in a position to capitalize on the NIL and get a great education, do it. And then if it pans out that you're one of these 1.5%, good for you. If not, you start your next phase, which is your real phase, and you have some money in the bank that you can now start doing things at a high level.
And the education.
People keep on discounting
skimmed over that one quickly.
Well, it's funny you say that because people forget about when we talk about scholarships and NIL. What's always gone on with scholarship is you get your education paid for. So can you imagine going to a Duke, a Vanderbilt, a Florida, a Georgia?
Which is a value of several $100,000.
Oh, almost $500,000 in some cases. That is worth more than anything you can do. And people just discount that. Oh, well, we want NIL money only. But the education, because everyone thinks they are the chosen one. And it's very cool. And that's just football. You take the numbers for baseball, it's even smaller because even if you get drafted, you're in the minor leagues. Mm-hmm. You're making hundreds of dollars a week. And the odds of getting to the major leagues where you get into arbitration is less than that.
Minuscule, sure.
You know, the NBA, if you're an elite college player, yes, there's a ticket quicker to make it faster. But we have to look at these kids overall, and parents focus on the wrong thing more times than not. And that's what media's done. That's what social media's done. And we've put it out there that everyone's a candidate to be the next superstar. And we have to focus on what's there, control the controllables, get your degree, get your NIL money if it's there. And if things pan out, wonderful. If not, really the NFL is plan B.
Sure.
Plan A is the other path.
Well, it's don't kill the dream of the kid, but also have the reality as the fallback because
Correct.
The numbers are so working against you. All right, this is where I'll remind you one more time, please subscribe to the podcast. Search up Deals and Deadlines, or if you're listening for the first time, just hit the subscribe button wherever you are. New episodes drop each and every Friday. You can also watch on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. Our executive producer today, and this is a big win for us, Andrew Groover. Wow. Thank you to you guys for spending your time with us. We'll talk to you next week on Deals and Deadlines.